Hello, everyone, and welcome to the pre-conference podcast. We have the pleasure today of having András Kiss and Manuel Sanchez from KYOS Energy Consulting. And they're going to be presenting on forecasting better revenues at our upcoming summit, the third edition of the power price forecasting. And the summit is going to take place in Milan on the 5th and 6th of June. So if you haven't registered yet but are interested, please feel free to email or message us in any platform possible. But let's go to the podcast. And thank you very much, András and Manuel, for joining me today. I have a lot of questions for you, but from the beginning, it would be great if you could introduce yourself, the company, what are your roles and what you're doing, basically.
Thanks. Also, welcome to everyone who's seeing this. My name is András Kiss. As you very correctly said, I'm a senior quantitative developer at KYOS, KYOS Energy Consulting. What KYOS is doing is we're providing financial technology to companies that are active in the energy sector and more broadly in commodity markets. So that's to a large extent, we are kind of like a software company working on really sophisticated models to value financial contracts, options, and also real assets like gas storages and batteries, which are the topic today.
Yeah, I'm Manuel Sanchez. I am an energy analyst, and what we as energy analysts do in KYOS is we have two functions. First is to make sure that everything that's happening in the energy market, in all the energy markets, is being reflected in our models. So we keep our models up to date in terms of certain trends, specific transformation of the energy system regulations. So we are always capturing the latest developments in the European energy markets. But also we provide consultancy services or tailored analysis from our modeling tools for specific customers that require a bit more of assistance or who cannot fully embrace like the whole complexity of our solutions in their hands. So we give more tailored use of our models for them.
Thank you for your introduction, and I'm really happy that we are going to have you at the event because your contribution will be very interesting and valuable to our participants. Coming back to the topic of your presentation, forecasting battery revenues, in terms of the relevance at the moment, why do you think it's especially important to discuss forecasting of battery revenues now?
Well, it's at any time you want to invest into any kind of asset that has a long lifetime of 10, 20 years or even more, then it's really important to think about how to forecast its revenues, of course. But at the moment, we are kind of in the middle of this energy transition towards a much more climate-friendly, but also a much more different energy sector than what we're used to. And that also means that there will be kind of a lot of upheaval, let's say, both in terms of prices, in terms of the technology mix of what production will be like in the market, but also in terms of how the networks will operate. And that will result, of course, in prices that will be different than what we're used to. And that also means concentrating on forecasting revenues for these kind of assets will be a lot more important, also a lot more challenging. And I also want to add that it has become clear because of the spread of renewables and the spread of weather-dependent producers that we need a lot more energy storage than what we currently have in the system. So that means, and also we need that pretty quickly. We need to ramp up with our total battery capacity or energy storage capacity quite soon. So for that reason, there are a lot of investors who are looking into this and thinking about all the different use cases, all the different business cases they can make for these batteries. So I think it's really a very exciting time to work on this.
We're happy to have you as part of the discussion at the summit. I think it's an important perspective to take, and looking forward to hearing it, to hearing more about it from both of you. But I'd like to, get back to what András mentioned in the beginning, that there are substantial differences in what we're used to and what we have to do now in terms of battery investments. But price forecasts in general very crucial to substantiate long-term investments. But are there any specific considerations in price forecasting when we're talking about battery investments?
This is a really interesting topic, and I think this is what makes battery valuation so different. Is because indeed, like, all the energy assets investment requires like some form of price forecasting to so the investors have some expectations of what can they receive from their assets. And I think in this particular topic, as András was saying, like the high deployment of renewables in the network is really affecting the prices, but also the price shape. Like, we have this famous dog curve for the prices, which is kind of giving a scoliosis to a dog, like for the sun time, and then we have peak prices when the sun is going down, and this is of course affecting the investment decision making. And from the battery point of view, like, this is something important, but this is not the most important thing, because there are still, like, the batteries have the ability to take advantage of this curve shaping, but there are still many other markets other than the day ahead, which is where we can see this dog curve shape, where the spreads and the volatility of the prices are giving huge opportunities for the batteries to appear. And modeling this and having like an advantage of knowing what to expect in terms of the impact of these markets in the valuation of the batteries is definitely crucial to know if batteries are worth investing on or not. So I think this integration of day ahead, intraday, balancing markets, FCR, it's definitely something that is very worthy to analyze.
Thank you for this.
Oh, sorry, can I also just add something?
Yes.
Yeah, I think some of that, maybe just to emphasize something that Manuel has already said. So there's a lot of this volatility, let's say extra volatility that is coming in, that maybe for a traditional, let's say, gas-fired producer wasn't that important before, because kind of it evened out over time. So that was maybe just a volatility of revenues, but overall it wasn't kind of an extra, let's say it wasn't an extra opportunity to make more money. It's not like sell, buy with this volatility, unlike what a battery can do, which really is just any kind of random variation. As long as you have some forecasting of that, that's an opportunity there to make money. So it's not a risk on your revenues, but it's more like it's maybe from a different perspective. It's really an opportunity to make more profits. So there's a lot more of this kind of variation in prices that has now become more interesting, I would say.
Absolutely, I agree, and thank you for contributing to that question as well. I'd like to follow up on that, because Manuel, finished the response with the differentiation between different wholesale markets, like day ahead, intraday, and balancing markets. But I'd like to just hear your insights into how are the forecasts, the price forecasts for these different wholesale markets different in terms of their importance to a battery. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's also kind of touching on this last market integration point, but also a little bit on what András was saying, that because indeed, a battery like buys and sell electricity and needs some spreads to have like potential good areas of exploring these price gaps. Like the integration of these markets, it is about the forward shape. So this is like the forecast of how the future prices will look like, but it also requires an understanding of the volatilities and the spread in the markets, but also across the markets. So how we create this distinction in KYOS is we say, okay, batteries profit from two different things. One is the physical delivery and purchase of electricity, but the second one is also the virtual purchase and electricity of purchase and selling of electricity. So, and in this sense, batteries are not only profiting from what they buy and they sell, but also they are profiting from their optionality. And valuing this optionality is often really difficult if you don't have the right tools to assess past volatilities and how these volatilities are correlated and integrated with, for instance, things like if this is a weekday, if this is a weekend, a holiday, in which month are we, in which season are we, like what have we seen when prices are like this, which correlations we have with all other energy carriers around. So, and of course, this becomes really complex and really out of hand. And if you are a business who are focusing on developing projects, and you on top of what you're already doing, you need to have all this amount of data, like, and all this amount of qualitative and quantitative consideration of the correlations of the historical past data, which is gigabytes and gigabytes of market data, then it's unfeasible that you are going to take all these elements into consideration. So that's why we, for the last 10 years, have been putting a lot of emphasis in integrating and correlating all these elements and make them interconnected in our platform. So it's easy for us and for our customers to use them in their analysis and to take this spread, these valuations and proper valuations of the optionality of their assets into account.
Thank you for elaborating further on the subject. I think it's very interesting what you're talking about. In terms of this conversation, are there any other important sources of revenues that we haven't discussed?
Yeah, so most of the volatility that we kind of implied or we're talking about is this wholesale market volatility. So either the day-ahead market, which has the typical shapes, or the intraday market, which is also a wholesale kind of market. So essentially, you pay for the energy that you buy or the energy that you sell. But of course, there are other markets in the energy sector, mostly, or a lot of them operated by the TSOs, which are these ancillary services markets, FCR, AFRR, MFRR, and so on and so forth. And batteries are very good in participating in some of these markets. And essentially there, it's a mix of a capacity payment. So essentially just your promise to be there for the TSO if the TSO needs you at a given time, and the mix of actual payments for the energy that you supply or that you take from the network in extra. So that's a different kind of price structure. And also most importantly, at least at the moment, the most important markets are the FCR markets where the batteries operate. So this kind of really short-term response to make sure that the system frequency is within the bounds that we need. So that's definitely another market where the battery gets its revenues from. And of course, also it's important to think about is that the market to participate in, is there maybe is that another market? So what is the trade-off between these markets? That's also something we think a lot about. And of course, the traders who at the moment trade with the batteries also think a lot about and try to develop more and more sophisticated methodology around that.
Thank you very much for elaborating on the subject. You've discussed different types of markets while talking about the battery modeling of the battery revenues, the intraday, the day ahead and balancing markets. But while thinking about modeling battery revenues, how do you decide which energy market to take into account? Because would it be possible to combine them in order to increase the return on investment of batteries?
Yeah, definitely. So that's kind of the holy grail of battery operation at the moment. So that's what a lot of investors and also traders and anyone who works with the batteries is looking at, is kind of how to get enough revenues from this market, that market, and that market, how to combine them optimally in order to maximize the value of the battery and to make it as useful as possible. So that's also definitely something we think a lot about here at KYOS, both in terms of the price forecasts, because it's not just choosing between totally separate markets, right? These markets are interconnected. So the intraday prices will be related to the day ahead prices of that exact period. And also FCR prices or other kinds of market prices will always also be somehow related to the other market prices. So it's challenging both from a price forecasting point of view, but also it's challenging from an optimization point of view. So how to think of the different timelines, for example. So if you think about should I commit some capacity to the FCR market or the day ahead market, that decision is about at the same time, currently at least in most markets. So that's in the pre-delivery day period, 1 day ahead essentially of when the physical service takes place. But then as you move forward, then the intraday markets take place. So how to combine these decisions, like let's say you want to participate in all of these three potentially, and then how to think of the trade-offs between two or three markets. That's something we look at quite a lot. Also, imbalance trading, this kind of it's not really a market, but kind of passive imbalance trading. So essentially, having a very short-term forecast about what kind of imbalance the system might have in the next 15 minutes, and then what kind of imbalance price that might result in, and then thinking whether it makes sense for the battery to kind of help the system out. So go in the other direction, kind of help the system out a bit, but also profit from the forecasted price. That's also something that we spend quite a lot of time trying to integrate with the other markets and thinking about, what a realistic trading strategy might be. How risky are these trading strategies, for example? So is it the case that kind of we take positions that are we close the positions at the time we take them, or is it that we open up ourselves to a future price variation or not? So that's also something that we try to build into our models and try to go in the direction that the actual energy traders would also go into in a market, because that's kind of how we think about how realistic our battery valuations are. So we definitely have to, we have a lot more long-term perspective on this. So we're not just trying to maximize things for the next day and then the day after that. We're kind of looking more, yearly or even from a multi-year perspective at this. But clearly, kind of our modeling has to be in a close enough correspondence with how real trading works. And we spend a lot of effort on trying to do that every day, essentially.
I'm glad that you began to really take a look on the practical work that you're doing, and I'd like to ask you more about it and to hear more about it. in terms of use cases for the KYOS's battery valuation model or price forecasting models in general, do you have any insights into that, and a few use cases? Maybe share a bit of insights into your experience on working with clients, something like that.
Yeah, sure. At KYOS, we mostly produce content that is useful to evaluate assets and to evaluate how these assets can profit from the energy markets. So, and in this realm, there are many lines in which we can explore. So that's where we have a portfolio of models and tools that can cope with different elements of the market. So, for instance, one is what would be the influence of a different scenario of renewable deployment in Europe to have a different fundamental price curve projected in the future, and how will this affect the value of an asset, either a plant, but a battery, or cogeneration, like any asset you mentioned. Then we have also other elements, like, for instance, you cannot predict when a power plant will shut down, right? Or when something is gonna collapse in the system, and when we will have a spike in the prices. And of course, this is important for the batteries, but it is impossible to know the future for a certain way. So that's why we've also focused on developing a stochastic approach. So we do not look into the future in a deterministic way, but we also look into the past and say, okay, we have certain likelihoods of seeing these events, and these events are correlated in this way with other aspects, and how these the result of this analysis and this methodology is that we do everything in terms of percentile. So we have certain likelihood of seeing these unlikely events, and certain likelihood seeing these other extreme events. And each time we benchmark a product, we benchmark in terms of the mean expected price, but also we show like the whole histogram of distribution of cash flow valuation, right? So because of that, we typically integrate our tools for the analysis based on what the customer is curious on knowing, or on understanding how could this affect the variations. And we typically do a couple of sensitivity analysis around either like this fundamental curve, this stochasticity, like a different scenario, like if a customer is considering purchasing between two different types of batteries, let's say like a more expensive capex vanadium but less degradation, lower fuel cycle constraint, or a well-known lithium-ion battery with lower capex but with a certain degradation profile. And they want to know what is like the impact on their cash flow retention, not only now but in the future. Like, we can put these things together and perform this type of analysis for them. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Also, can I add something? Of course. Yeah. So also one thing I was kind of surprised to see, let's say, when I started working with customers and looking at what kind of battery, like what are they interested in the outputs. And very often it's not the final number. It's not the expectation of, here's many different scenarios and that's the average, or that's the expected outcome. But they are just as interested in this, or maybe even more interested in looking at, okay, but what is the distribution? So it's not just how much, what is the expected return, but also how risky is this expected return. And and because of this kind of stochastic approach to price forecasting, that's something we can very easily build into any of the asset valuation models, including the battery valuation models. So that's kind of a very useful outcome that maybe before I saw how clients were working on this, I didn't expect that they were interested in it to this extent. but that was just my shortcoming. It of course makes sense, right? It's not just presenting how much money you can earn with this battery, but also it's presenting, what is the probability that we're not actually going to earn this money,
your risk exposure,
and what's the risk exposure, and that's I think that's a great part of having this kind of strong financial background inside a company, that we can integrate this into any of the valuations that we perform, including the battery valuations.
It's very interesting, and the way you're talking about it is very interesting, even to a non-industry related person. I'm sure you'll be very popular during the networking breaks, and you'll talk more about it to the audience and to the participants. As a one last question, I'd like to ask you if you have any interesting projects you are working on, or new developments, or something that you're preparing for at the moment that you could share.
I mean, around this battery valuation, I think there has been like a boom on the last few months in terms of emails received, questions asked about it, like interest shown, projects that we've performed for customers, but also for new customers, and these deployments go from simple battery evaluation, like, okay, we want to know what is the expected revenue from a battery located here. So this is like the most popular demand that we receive. But sometimes we also receive very interesting questions or assessments, demands for the value of batteries with collocated assets, which is becoming increasingly interesting for not only for asset owners, but also for grid managers, right? Because it becomes like an alternative of, okay, if I have like a relatively modest area, which I know that the demand is not going to increase a lot, but it has a lot of ground potential for renewables. And if these renewables come into place here, and I need to extend my distribution network to fit them, I will be spending all this amount of money. But what if I could only increase a little bit my grid and capture part of the otherwise curtailed energy with a battery? So this type of analysis, we sometimes receive this type of questions, very interesting. Or even talking about the same topic of congestion management and grid development, we have received one very interesting project to value how limiting the exposure to batteries, well, not limiting the exposure, but limiting the connection to the grid of batteries, how will this influence the cash flow retention of the batteries, assuming different market scenario, different market participation, but also different surroundings of demand, which will result in different constraining profiles for the grid. And each time we work on these projects, we learn a lot, and we transfer all of our analytical tailored solution of the customer into our integrated toolbox. And this is something that makes our toolbox to grow, not only in terms of complexity and things that we consider, but also in terms of how we are capturing reality and what's been happening outside and what we are learning from our customers.
Yeah, I wanted to add, before I answer my part, I wanted to add one more thing to Manuel's part, which is so I think one of the really interesting things is, like, when you say we're going to value an asset, we're building a model or building a software solution to value an asset, and then you think, okay, then automatically your clients will be the investors, right? But with batteries, and maybe also with other things, but with batteries, certainly it's not the case. There's a much more wider interest in what batteries can do. For example, Manuel has mentioned system operators, not just the TSOs, but also the distribution system operators. So that's also one. Traders would also be interested, and kind of many other participants are looking at some aspect, using the battery for some kind of purpose, and it can be used for many different purposes. So, for example, one of the potential future developments that we're not actually looking into yet, because these are markets that are not existing throughout Europe, at least not so much. They're in the pilot phase, is these local flexibility markets. So when there's just a very localized congestion, sometimes not even congestion, but kind of a localized voltage issue, for example. So batteries are also kind of very useful for voltage regulation, so you can use them for that purpose as well. And
like GoPex, for instance, just in case people are curious.
Yeah, in the Netherlands we have GoPex. The UK is of course a lot more advanced in this regard, but these markets will have to come into existence because electrification will proceed no matter what, and it will be very costly to build up, to kind of increase network capacity no matter what. So there will have to be markets around this that value the importance of congestion, or value the kind of how much money you should be willing to kind of expand the network here versus maybe put in a battery and then try to solve a problem that only exists for a few hours a month, for example, with a battery. Okay, so that's what I wanted to add to his why his job is interesting. Now, my job is actually a lot more interesting even than his, because not to me. I'm working on the modeling side. I'm very much in the depth of the software code, and also thinking about how to put these markets together, how to do the optimization the best way possible. And I think what's most interesting or exciting is that this combination of markets is the way to do it better and better and more efficiently is kind of it's an ongoing process. So it's not that everyone has already figured out how to do this perfectly. It's for example the energy traders who are dispatching these assets or trading with the capabilities of these assets. They are also continuously improving what they can do in these markets and how they can combine them more efficiently. And that's also kind of a game that we are also participating in, of course, with a much longer term focus. So we're not looking at maximizing or optimizing the revenues for the next day. We're looking at capturing the statistical properties for a longer term and trying to give a response for like a valuation for a longer term period. But it's like all the time we think about, okay, but then how can we pull in another market maybe and more efficiently combine that with the existing ones? And do we have to kind of reorganize how we optimize the existing markets? So it's a lot of thinking about algorithms, and it's a lot of programming challenges also, and it's essentially every day. Like okay, we've just done this, we've made the model a little bit better, and there are already 5 more ideas about how to make the model even better, and we just have to pick, which one do we do first, and just keep going. Yeah, so I think it's a very exciting time to be both on the consulting side, but also on the developing side of this. Certainly, yeah.
From the outside, it definitely looks like you're going to be very busy with a bunch of new ideas that are coming up. And I thank you very much for sharing this with me and the audience and with Future Bridge. I think it's been a fascinating conversation. And myself and I'm speaking on behalf of Future Bridge. We're really excited to actually meet you at the event, and we're sure that the audience is going to love your presentation. So we thank you very much for joining us, both today
Thanks.
and for the summit. It's been a pleasure, and I'd just like to wrap it up by saying that if you are not yet registered to attend the Power Price Forecasting Summit 3rd edition, then feel free to do so. We'll be happy to have you, and you'll get to hear more from András and Manuel about forecasting battery revenues and many more other interesting topics, I'm sure.
Thank you, Olga, and thank you, everybody, and see you in Milan.
Thanks. We look forward to it.
Yeah.